now, Existentialism at the Wheel. This is my first poetry collection, and it's coming out the summer of 2023. I'm going to read 2 poems from that collection tonight. Now, these poems in the book are mostly, they return to the same sort of metaphor, the same subject matter, and that's driving. This is something I noticed that I did over the years, I rather subconsciously. And when I started to put this manuscript together, I thought, well, this can form the sort of the backbone of the collection. So there are quite a few driving poems in this collection, and the first one that I'm going to read for you is one of those driving poems. I chose it because I think it's probably the most representative of my style and what you can expect when you read the book. So it's a travelogue poem, and it contains some ideas that I had for Dumb Luck, the novella that Unsolicited Press put out in 2020. Now, not to give too much away if you haven't read it, but in that book, the protagonist ends up taking a trip on a plane. But initially, my idea was for him to take a road trip across country, drive across country. And so I had all these ideas of, little excursions he could have along the way, but I didn't end up using it. So I thought I could write this as a poem, and it came out really well. And actually, the Mark Literary Review published this on their online journal, and I really appreciated that, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. This is called "The Dark Hung Heavy Above Me." The dark hung heavy above me in an apartment on the edge of town, at an hour when night and morning had called a brief truce. And I was thinking I'd rather be anywhere but here, rather be driving the back roads of Illinois at dusk with nowhere to be, rather sing hallelujah on the banks of the Mississippi in Memphis, rather fall from grace in St. Louis, rather lose my nerve at a sidewalk cafe in Iowa City, rather feel anointed under the bar lights in Minneapolis and stumble drunk back to my hotel room alone, rather wake up forgetting who I was in Sioux Falls, rather feel the cold snow stinging my cheeks in downtown Topeka, rather pace like a caged animal amid the slots of a Tulsa casino, rather get lost driving through the prairie west of Amarillo and have the guy behind the gas station counter laugh when I ask for directions, rather have expensive cocktails at a rooftop party in Santa Fe while listening to artists argue about sincerity, rather ascend body and soul in Boulder, rather lock my key in my room in Salt Lake City, rather have a glimpse of perfection in Cheyenne, rather feel the warm breeze with the windows down as I speed past Reno's neon bulbs, rather see the morning fog burning off above the trees in wine country near Sonoma, rather taste the salt as I dive headfirst into the Pacific at Big Sur, rather turn the car around in San Francisco and point it east toward the future, rather drive and drive and drive, rather withstand wave after wave of American dreams as I head back, almost home but not yet. Still plenty of time to wonder what's next. Still plenty of time to imagine who I'll be until the day I die. That's The Dark Hung Heavy Above Me. One of, I think about a dozen driving poems, in the collection. And this next one that I'm going to read is a little bit different. It's a little different in tone and in subject matter. This is actually, I owe a great debt for this one to the incomparable Maggie Smith, who I think a lot of you are probably fans of. She has this great poem called Poem Beginning with a Retweet. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But the opening line, the retweet, in that poem is, if you drive past horses and don't say horses, you're a psychopath. It's one of my favorite opening lines ever. And I love the whole poem. And I wrote this as a sort of nod to that. It's the same sort of poem about all these little things that we do and experience that they may seem ordinary, but they're actually very profound, and they bring us together, they link us together. So this is Little Things, and it's after Maggie Smith. What kind of monster are you if you've never waved someone on at a four-way stop? How many lives have you lived if you've never pulled a library book off the shelf and thumbed through it without really knowing why? Are we speaking the same language? You understand, don't you? If this poem is a stone covered with ancient glyphs, walk away. If you've never stepped out into a blinding summer sun and told your friend how bright it is, I want little to do with you. You've thrown your arms around someone and told them it's okay when you had no idea if it was okay, haven't you? You feel those echoes far down in depths only you have access to. You're right to feel vulnerable. Forget them, I'm with you. After all, if the spirit doesn't enter the room along with your favorite song, what's the point? Thank you. So those are two poems from Existentialism at the Wheel. And the third piece that I want to read tonight is a passage from Dumb Luck, which I know some of you have read, so I don't want to give too much background on it, just in case anyone is thinking about checking it out. So I'll just say that when I wrote Dumb Luck, the protagonist in it was, I was trying to create this sense that he was haunted by something larger than himself that he couldn't quite put his finger on. And it had a lot to do with what was happening in the world around him at that time. And so I did my best, and then real life intervened, and events have sort of conspired in the time since then to make some of the passages in Dumb Luck much more haunting even than I intended them to be. I sat down and read it the other night, and this passage that I'm going to read, had red lights blinking. I thought, oh my gosh, this is the one that really encapsulates the whole book. So I want to read this passage to you. I won't contextualize it as far as what's going on in the story, but I think it's one of the passages that I'm proudest of in the book as far as the writing. I remember very well writing this passage and thinking this will survive all the edits through the whole process, and this will be in the final draft. So this is from Dumb Luck, my novella, which Unsolicited Press published in 2020. As rattled as I was after rushing out of the party, my thoughts drifted back to the homeless man sitting on the sidewalk. I wanted to feel empathy for him in the same way I felt it for the people affected by the hurricanes. But even that brief pang of conscience failed to materialize. The numbness had set in. If I was honest with myself, it had been setting in for years. I got up off the bed and walked over to the window. I wondered if choosing Vegas had been an inevitability. Where else would you go when the whole country seemed to be having a slow-rolling nervous breakdown? What else would you do but stand at the window of your room in a high-rise hotel and stare through your reflection at this preposterous neon bulb of a city in the middle of an ancient desert, unable to tell where the lights stopped and the darkness began?
Oh, wow.
Thank you all.
Wow.
That's my prepared text. Looking forward to some questions later. I hope we can has some good back and forth. There's one guy I see over there I know has a really tough question for me, and he's smiling like a Cheshire cat right now. Okay, so I'm gonna throw it to my reading mate tonight. Patricia O'Donnell is a professor of creative writing at the University of Maine at Farmington, where she directs the BFA program in creative writing. Her short stories have appeared in the New Yorker and elsewhere. And her books include a novel, a memoir, and a collection of short fiction. She lives in Wilton, Maine with her husband, and her forthcoming work, Symmetry of Husbands, is on the way from Unsolicited Press. Patricia, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was a great reading. It left us wanting to hear more, which is always a good place to leave us. I tend to go on, so I hope I can leave people in the same place, but I wouldn't count on it. Thank you. I also want to thank Unsolicited Press, as you did. I just really appreciate that press that does what they do because they love books and they want to get more of books out there in the world. I mean, that's their motivating force behind what they do. And I just really appreciate that. And we've benefited from it. Okay, I'm going to talk about the two books that I had with that I have and will have with Unsolicited Press. As Adam was saying, there are other books that I've had published, a memoir and a collection of short stories and another novel. But I want to talk about the two Unsolicited Press books tonight. The first one was published in 2019, this beautiful cover, A Vigilance of Stars. And its title was taken from a poem that I read at the beginning of a book about Wilhelm Reich, which I thought was sort of telling. Because of the connections that the book has with Wilhelm Reich. The poem was written by Anna Akhmatova, and here are the words. No, I don't have the words from it. Yeah, here it is. He was blessed with an eternal childhood with the givingness and vigilance of stars. And so those were about Wilhelm Reich, and he is a minor character in the book. And I also thought that quote kind of resonated with the themes of the book as I saw them, that as a resident of Central Maine, I look out my window and I just see woods. And the novel is set mostly on a lake in Central Maine, where nature is a really motivating force. And it's a force to the main character, Kia. As I was writing the book, the thing that I was thinking of was, I love the little sound of the dogs, who's over they are, that she has to learn to trust her own nature and to trust nature in general. And I started the book with the idea that I would end it with Kia paddling a kayak towards an uninhabited island where she would have this sort of encounter with her own fate, with something that was life-changing and she was not at all prepared for. So the island is something that I see when I look out the window of our camp on a lake in Maine. It's Parker Pond. As she paddles out there, she sees the stars. And one thing about Wilhelm Reich is that he felt that orgone energy permeates the universe, permeates the stars, permeates the earth, and is very flaky ideas. But there's a certain charm and beauty in them that I thought sort of set a tone for the book that I wanted to capture. All right, I'll just read the first 2 pages of that book. And I don't think it needs any introduction. Kia, half awake since 4 a.m. on her narrow bed, makes herself wait until the sun is above the horizon before allowing herself to get up and pad into the bathroom. She opens the foil package carefully, pulls her pajamas down, and sits on the toilet. This is the second time she has taken the test, so she knows how it works. She lets go a stream, then tightens the muscles inside herself to stop, and puts a stick between her legs before she lets loose again. Midstream, it is called. In the middle of the stream, in the middle of her life, Kia closes her eyes, letting the water out, and imagines herself thigh-high in a stream up north, casting a fly rod, the line curving a graceful arc into the rushing water. She will catch something this time, a small slippery fish. She has not tried for this, but birth control, even the best, the most effective kind of birth control, does not always work. As the light of the sun makes its way between two buildings on Commercial Street, glancing off a bit of bright water to land on her still sitting on the toilet, she stares at the stick in her trembling hand, sees one blue line, then another crossing it. She doesn't know if the feeling inside her is physical or emotional or even metaphorical, but something bright and painful blossoms within her, causing her to lie down on the colorful hooked rug and curl around, hugging herself. It is desire for whatever is already inside her that she feels. Lying on the rug alone in her small apartment with the morning sun touching her shoulders, Kia sees the future break open and start growing inside her. It's something that she would not have dared to ask for, but knows instantly she will not refuse. Then there's a space break, second point of view. I'll read that and then I'll be done with that. There is a time in the evening when it is neither day nor night, neither light nor dusk. Divisions dissolve. Peter sits by his open second floor window, picking on the banjo. The light in the room is a gray that softens everything, makes it hazy, and the sound as it floats through the room and out the window seems more substantial to him than the walls. If he half closes his eyes, if he unfocuses, it's as if he can loosen the structure of himself, of his body and his mind and whatever makes him him, and he becomes part of the leaves whispering in the dusk, the sound of the music rising and falling on the floating air. Eventually, Peter lays his banjo on his bed and turns on the lamp, and light blooms into the room. Night now, dark outside the windows and light inside, and he lives inside his body again. He is Peter King, tree climbing arborist, banjo picking philosophy BA. He thinks briefly of Kia, wonders again if and how they should break up. He doesn't want to hurt her, but he's not ready to be part of someone in a structured way, linked by a ring or a promise. That kind of commitment is not for him, not yet anyway. There are places to go, things to do. He isn't sure what they are yet, but he's just 26. And when he thinks of commitment, he thinks of doors closing, of a hallway narrowing in rather than opening up. He doesn't think he's polyamorous like his previous girlfriend was. He doesn't want to love many people at one time. Just one is enough. One is all he can handle, but not for long. The leaves of the trees are thick and heavy outside his window. He hears them rustling in the breeze, and the sound reminds him of the melody he was picking out. He pulls a journal towards him and opens it. The words to a song come to him. The road is here, and it's a long ways away. I'm there, I'm here, I'm lost on the way. He pictures a little drum beat, snares, banjo breaking in. Okay, I'm going to leave that and turn to the new book. Whoops, I lost my people. Can you see me? Oh, there you are. Got you back again. All right. I hit some button and you disappeared. The new book, which I don't have any beautiful cover to show yet, but I will someday, which I'm really looking forward to. This is coming out, I think it's in 2022 with Unsolicited Press, although it may be 2023. 2023, okay. So this title, I was really glad to hear, I think Rosalia is your name, say that you like the title because I wasn't at all sure of the title. The title was an issue for me. It also was taken from a poem like the other title was. Oddly enough, I didn't really realize that until I was just thinking about this discussion here. This title was taken from a poem at the very beginning of the book, which is quoted in the book. A widow reads this poem at the funeral of his wife. In the first few pages of the book. And the poem is a poem that I ran across somewhere. It's called The Kaleidoscope by Douglas Dunn, a poet I know nothing about. But the relevant lines for it, where I took the title from, are these. The husband in the poem is grieving, thinking of his wife lying in her bed before he died. And the person reading it is very much like that, the husband reading this at his wife's funeral. Turning from the landing, I might find my presence watched through your kaleidoscope, a symmetry of husbands, each redesigned in lovely forms of foresight, prayer, and hope. So I thought of calling the book Kaleidoscope, but it seemed like there were about a zillion books with that title. So I decided to skip that, although it was pretty appropriate. And then I liked the title, The Absurd Forgiveness, which is also from the poem, from these lines: grief wrongs us so. I stand and wait and cry for the absurd forgiveness, not knowing why, which I really loved. And I thought, well, that's just a weird title, but I'll try it out. And I was looking for an agent at the time, and I sent the book to an agent, and she declined, saying that there wasn't much of a market these days for forgiveness. Which I thought was really interesting and really sad. But I decided to land on the Symmetry of Husbands, and I'm pretty happy with that. The book is about forgiveness of a sort, of oneself as well as others. But it's also about sort of recognition and discovery of blame where it belongs, and about a loss of innocence. It's also about marriage and infidelity and the confusion of the main character, Abigail, as she figures things out. The title was taken from a poem, but the idea of the story of the whole book, this is going to sound weird, but it's true. It came to me in a dream. I dreamed the story one night. I woke up and I had this whole story, this whole novel had taken place in a dream. At least I imagined that if I could write that out, it would be a novel. And I told my husband about it, and he said, yeah, that would be a good novel. And so I thought, okay, with that sort of validation, I thought, okay. And I just tried to write it out, the ideas out, put it aside. About 2 or 3 years later, picked it up again and tried to shape it into a novel, and was happy that that Unsolicited Press accepted it. So I'm going to read just the first 2 pages, I think, of that book, 2.5 pages. This is the maiden voyage of that book. No one has read these pages except me and the people at Unsolicited Press and one friend, I think. Norma, you didn't read this book, did you? I don't think
No.
she. Okay. You've read other books of mine, and so have you, Amy. But I think the only other person who read it is one novelist and nonfiction writer named Kitty Burns-Flory. Okay, so this is from the opening of the book also. It's from the book is divided into 3 books, and the first book is called Grief Wrongs Us So. And this is chapter 1 from that. Footsteps whisper on the marble floor and wooden pews creak, sounds wafting up and disappearing into the vaulted ceiling. The church slowly fills, grief thickening like a sauce. Abigail recognizes a senior editor from the publishing house where Douglas works, and the man's wife, Clara. Someone here has a daughter named Clara. This is an aside. Yes. All right. Okay. Back to the novel. Clara. They pause in front of the gray streaked marble urn, shaped like a vase, resting on a pedestal in front of the altar. The woman touches it, long fingers stroking the smooth surface. Then they take a seat not far from Doug and his daughter, Phoebe. Abigail's eyes linger on Phoebe, on her slim, erect back and its dark suit jacket, on the shining fall of her hair. She imagines Phoebe washing her hair this morning, sudsing with eyes closed, needing to look good for her mother's funeral. Abigail wants to be next to her, but sits a few rows back. James beside her straightens his back against the pew. Abigail adjusts her dark skirt over her tights. Voices hush as a woman in a black dress steps to a music stand in the corner by the altar. Colored light falls on her from the stained glass window. She lifts a violin to her shoulder and pauses, then slides the bow across the strings. The program, with Megan's photo on the cover, says it is a Bach partita. Abigail stares at Megan's face as she listens to the thin, slippery string of music. Megan is smiling as if she knows something about Abigail that she doesn't want to say. Abigail folds her hands over the program and closes her eyes. Her hands are covered in warmth. She opens her eyes to see James' hand placed over hers. His head tilts toward her as he looks at her from above his glasses. She leans her head on his shoulder briefly. The ceremony will be short, without a full funeral mass. It's what she wanted, Douglas said, what Megan had asked for. As she listens to the music, Abigail is trying to remember if Megan ever said anything to her about what she wanted at her funeral. She can't think of anything. They talked about life, not death. Not what came after life. She looks down again at Megan's face on the program. Taken 10 or 15 years ago, the wind is tossing her curls across her face. There is a glimpse of a gray ocean behind her. A woman Abigail doesn't know steps up to read biblical passages aloud. The one from Ecclesiastes, which always reminds her of the old song by the Byrds, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot the plant, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build. Abigail knows this is true, but she can't help but think that it was too soon for Megan, too soon to have this life taken away from her. The next reading is from the Old Testament. Oh, would that my words were written down. Would that they were inscribed in a record, that with an iron chisel and with lead they were cut in the rock forever. But as for me, I know that my vindicator lives, and that he will at last stand forth upon the dust. After the readings, Douglas steps up. Rather than walking up steps to the pulpit as the readers did, he stands at the front of the church facing the congregation. He wears a navy linen sports coat and a white shirt, and his light hair falls to one side of his forehead in a way that looks untended, but Abigail has seen him pushing mousse into it with his fingertips in front of the bathroom mirror. Tall and angular, Douglas can't help but command the room, even pale as he is now, even with dark circles under his eyes. From a jacket pocket, he pulls something and holds it up. It is a silver cylinder about 6 inches long. He moves it from one hand to the next, and from where she sits, Abigail can see that his fingers are trembling. She squeezes James' hand, grateful for his solid warmth. I hope you will forgive me for not having much to say today, but I needed to say something. My wife, Megan, his voice catches on the name. He swallows, then goes on. Megan deserves more than I can say about her. Her intelligence, her courage, and her kindness were beyond compare. He looks down at the glinting cylinder, turning it in his fingers. She saw beauty everywhere she looked. He holds the cylinder up, turning it in his fingers. Megan kept this kaleidoscope on her bedside table, and I would sometimes come in her room to see her looking through it. Looking through this was just one of the ways she turned a plain world beautiful and prismatic. Here Douglas lifts the cylinder, holding it against one eye as he looks around the room through it, at his daughter Phoebe, at others, at Abigail. And that's all I have. I appreciate your listening and